Hi, everybody. I appreciate y'all taking some time today to come and talk about managing grief and loss with children. My name is Bassoni. I am a LCSW. I'm part of the program that offers 5 free sessions, mental health visits per fiscal year to all UK employees, sponsored dependents, children, retirees. And that's per fiscal year. And we see people for work issues, for personal issues. The only thing we don't do is couples counseling, and we will try our best to find you a referral if that's what you need. But today we're going to talk about managing grief and loss with children. And I think this is particularly important right now because grief not only is about losing a loved one or somebody that we know, but it's also about a change in circumstances or a move or the whole thing that happened with the pandemic and people kids not being able to go to school. So lots, just a little bit, hold on here. Let me get all organized. How to move this. There we go. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what grief is, some differences that we see in children from 0 on up to 18, and then also guidelines for how a child's adult can help them. And I use the word adult rather than parents because sometimes our kids are being taken care of by grandparents or aunts, uncles, things like that. So this is just whatever adults might be in the child's life. So to start with, we want to talk about what grief is. And, we experience, most of us experience grief at some point in our life. And it's usually associated with the death of someone that we love. Everybody experiences grief differently, and how their feelings are expressed or felt are very different, and how long somebody grieves can be very different from how long another person grieves. So it's an individual activity, or not an activity, but it's an individual impact. But I also, like I said, wanted to mention that we are talking about that there is grief for other losses. And that goes for adults and for children. And it might be, during the pandemic, a lot of teenagers were struggling because they didn't get to see their friends. And so they were grieving the loss of connection there. Or if you move or you change jobs or, you don't get something that you want or your marriage ends. These are all things that can bring about feelings of grief. So it is not just solely related to the death of someone. Warden was a psychologist, and he talked about the stages of mourning. And mourning is a little bit different than grief. Mourning is the way we express our grief. So grief is the feelings that come about, and mourning is the expression of those feelings. And he found that, one of the most important stages of mourning is that you have to accept the reality of the loss. And that's accepting the situation as it is. And you have to acknowledge it. And I think for a lot of people, and kids included, sometimes we want to push that feeling down or deny that it's happened. But if you want to move forward, you do have to accept the reality of the loss or the change or the difference. And I don't know, in our culture here in the United States, we tend to avoid feelings sometimes or ignore them or push them down. And if you don't experience the pain of losing or change, then you get stuck. And for kids, they are going to be looking to adults often to help them go through these stages and recognize their feelings and help them process the feelings. And that can be really hard, especially if, I always think in this situation of if it's your parent that died, but it's your child's grandparent, and how you're grieving as well, and you're tasked with also helping your child. So we are demonstrating to children and teens how to grieve, or what's an appropriate way to grieve. So grieving isn't just about crying or just about pain. Some people will journal, some people will write songs, some people will start a foundation. So there's all different ways that we can work through the pain of grief. So then the third thing is that now that something has changed, whether it's the death or a change in circumstances or environment, we have to adjust, and that can be really difficult. Kids often don't know how to adjust, and things seem a little bit out of control, and it can be a scary time for them. And for many kids, if it's a move or a change in schools or something like that, the unknown can be really scary for a lot of kids. So we have to figure out how to reorient ourselves and our children to new situations. And then the last part of mourning is, how do you then incorporate the memory of the person, of the place, of the situation into who you are as you move forward? And that often is a hard thing for people because there's some fear of letting the deceased person down, or if I move forward, it means I'm not connected anymore to where I've been. And that's not the truth. We want to find a way to see what we were given by the person that is deceased, or the place that we have left, or the marriage that ended. What did we get out of those? And then move forward with that. And you guys just stop me if you have any questions. I don't mind answering questions. So there are some developmental differences in grief, and there's similar ways to react to kids at different ages, but their manifestation of the grief can be very different. So when kids are 0 to say 5, you might see more regression in their behaviors. If they are infants, or toddlers, they might start needing a diaper again, or their sleep could be upset. They might be extra fussy. They might not eat or take their food as easily as they did before. As they get a little older, you might see that some of them are experiencing nightmares, or they become more clingy, especially because in their thinking, they are thinking that that something bad could happen to you, since something bad has happened to somebody else, or there's been a change and now there's another change. So they want to be close to make sure that you're there if something were to happen. And at the age of 2 to 5, there's also this magical thinking that happens, and it's why we really encourage that you use the words dead, deceased, death, dying, instead of euphemisms, because I've worked with a kid before who really was struggling to go to sleep because the way it was explained that his father had died was that he fell asleep and had gone to heaven. And so when we do that, we don't know how kids are going to interpret that or what they keep in mind with that. So we want to use those words when we talk about it to them. And we want to be watching for these things. And as these, the 0 to 5 age is an age where they might not have all the words to explain to you how they're feeling. So you want to look for the behavior changes. Are they crying more? Have their habits changed? Are they more clingy? Are they not sleeping as well? And those would be clues that there should be some concern. From 5 to 8, This is when kids start understanding that death is permanent. And along with that understanding, they begin to start out knowing that not only do other people die, but they also can die. That's there. And in this age, you're seeing a little bit of that, and you're seeing some still talking about magical thinking. So it's real important to talk to them. Again, that's why I say use correct words. And when you explain death to this age and the other age, you want it to be very basic. You want a very simple conversation. You don't want to give them too much information, but enough that they can ask questions if they want, and you don't overwhelm them with too much information. So from 5 to 8, you might see that they're asking the same question over and over. There might be some denial that it has happened, and you might see more irritability, more daydreaming. And one thing that I have bothered some parents is that their activity level increases, and this is just a way of coping that 5 to 8-year-olds have, because play is normal and wanting to be with their friends is normal. And those are all okay things. That doesn't mean they're not grieving. It's just you might see an increase in their desire to be with others during this time. At this age, you also want to think about allowing the child to have some sort of memento of the person who's died, or maybe if you all have moved, a picture of the old house, or pictures of their friends. Make sure that they still have a connection with people, maybe old schoolmates or things like that. And again, answer the questions concisely. And there's this ongoing need for children to be assured that they are safe and they belong. And especially when a child has moved into a new environment, they sometimes worry, will I belong? Will I find my place? And I don't know that they always use those words, but we want to help them feel a part of. And some of what you might do if someone has died is, I really like reading books with kids about grief. And there are some good ones out there. Of course, the names are escaping me at this point, but make it age appropriate. And what I suggest to people is that you just leave the book out. And if the child wants to pick it up and look at it, they can. If you want to be very purposeful and say, hey, how about we read this book or look at this book, that's okay too. At this age also, you will want to include them in services. And I guess this is it's both personal, but it's also, I think research backed it up, that it is good for the children to go to services, or the funeral or the celebration of life. And at some particular age, you can start asking them if they'd like to. But I've always said to the adults in kids' life is, get them to go. And one thing that will often lead to a child saying no or a teen saying no is that they don't know what's going to happen. So if you can talk to them about, this is what a funeral is, and this person will get up and talk, and they're going to talk about your grandma, and some people might be crying, there might be laughter, or if it's there might be a slideshow, and this is when too, if they do, and let's say it's a death and it's a funeral and it's an open casket. That's why when you say to your child, maybe, dad had a heart attack and he died, and we're not going to see him alive anymore. Because if it's an open casket and they see him, that can be confusing. So we're not going to see them alive anymore is often a good way to put that. and different ways of saying, that the person has died is, well, your mom's heart stopped working and she won't be coming home from the hospital because she died. And it's just plain speak. And those words are really hard for all of us. I think until we get comfortable somewhat with talking about grief. The same thing if you are moving or you all are getting a divorce. You talk about, mom and dad aren't getting along anymore, and we've decided that we are going to live apart, and we both love you very much, and very short things, and then ask if they have questions. If you all are moving, that's a little bit different, because you might say, well, we're moving, but we will come back to the neighborhood and visit occasionally, if that's something you plan to do. If you plan to move across, to another state, that might not happen. So you might say, we're going to move, and I'm pretty sure we're not going to make it back here very much. So, preparing them for what's coming can help them prepare themselves for attending any type of funeral or celebration or anything like that. So when you get to the 8 to 12-year-olds, this is when middle schoolers and younger, they start understanding that death is permanent. Some of them may still be experiencing that magical thinking that, oh, such and such just went on a trip and they will be back. So we're seeing a transition here, a little bit of both, just depending on the developmental level. We see that mainly in the 8, 9, 10-year-olds. With this group, you really kind of want to watch for subtle clues, because this is a group that hides their feelings a little bit better than other age groups. So you want to ask them if they are struggling with feeling sad about something, or you might ask them if you notice that they're feeling a certain way. And kids' expressions can be very different. We see in kids, when they are depressed or anxious, it often comes out looking like irritability. So if you say, you look like you're really mad, that gives them the opportunity to say either, yes, I am mad, or no, I feel really sad, or I'm missing such and such, or I want to go back to our old house. And that then opens a conversation for you to be able to talk about those feelings of loss that they might have. Another thing that is helpful for this age group is to offer choices whenever it's convenient. That gives them a little bit of a sense of control and having more say in their environment. So that's something to think about too. Besides the kind of some of their more mask behaviors, you might see more risk taking in these kids. They might want to be a caregiver. They might want to take care of you. And while that's nice and it's helpful, you need to be the one that is taking care, both of yourself and of your child. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But these are some of the things you see in the 8 to 12-year-olds. So for adolescents, this is a harder age. They understand that death is permanent. They understand usually that they can die and that people they love will die, that in fact everybody dies. And so they start to question what life means, the meaning of life, and they are incorporating this into their identity. So you will see some difficulty in concentrating. Their grades might slip down for a while. They might be more forgetful, and they might withdraw more. And I have parents all the time say, well, how do I tell if it's just a normal teenager being in their room versus a teenager that's withdrawing? And the teenager that is withdrawing, you're going to notice a lot of these other things, with the grades dropping, or that they're not talking to friends, or they don't come down to eat with you, things like that, more irritability, more crying, whereas the teen that is just, being a teen and isolating a little bit from their family, they're still doing things with their friends. They're still getting their homework in, hopefully. This is also the age where we might see more experimentation with drinking or drug use. So we want to watch for that, make sure, are their friends the same people? Are they hanging out with new people or different people? And there's this idea that they want to protect you, and whether it's because of a divorce or because of a death or a move, there's that sense of caretaking again. But it's also it's kind of a mixed bag, because there's this caretaking part, and then there can be this separation part too. So it kind of depends on your child, what you're going to see from them. The big thing, and I know that when someone dies, that you have a reaction too. And I want you all to hear and to know that it is okay to cry in front of your children. It's okay to express that you're sad or you're missing someone, or you wish that this hadn't happened or that hadn't happened. Because what you're doing is showing them that it's okay to express emotion. Now, if you are just really sobbing out of control, that might be something that you want to do more privately. But the usual crying and things like that, I think it's great to be able to show a child that this is how I express emotion. And if they want to care for you, you can say, thank you, I'm okay. This is just how I show that I'm feeling really sad, or that I am missing your dad or your mom, or something like that. And the same thing, I miss our neighbors. Maybe you used to spend a lot of time with your neighbor and you're missing that person, and it's okay to say, I know we had to move, but I really miss such and such. Some needs, we talked a little bit there about what you guys are looking for, and in a grieving child. And let me just stop for a minute. Does anybody have any questions about a specific age group or anything that I mentioned there? All right.
And I do have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Jenny.
It's just a little bit of a different, but also at the same time similar grieving process for a child who has lost a bio parent. I'm an adoptive parent.
Okay.
And the parent is still living, but the relationship is severed. And I've had 3 of these children since infancy, and they had a relationship with both bio parents. And as they age, the questions are different.
Yeah.
And their ages 6, 7, and 8 now. And a lot of the questions are dealing with the acceptance and the reality of why, the question of why. And I try to answer the questions age appropriately as they come. But they are asking a lot more specific questions now. And so I wrestle with how much truth do I tell them? And I do give them a lot of reassurance, but I do strongly wrestle with really telling them much at all. So how do you approach that?
Well, I think about when I used to work for Bluegrass Impact, and we worked with kids with emotional behavior problems. And one of my kids, her mother was a substance user. And because of the use of substances and multiple chances, she was not able to take care of this girl and her sister. And so she was 5 or 6 at the time that the parental rights were terminated, and her adoptive mother or her foster mother ended up adopting her. But we just answered them very, very plainly of, your mom is sick, and she uses these substances that people are not supposed to use and that aren't healthy, and that makes her have difficulty taking care of you. So we just, in very concise language that she could understand, or these kids could understand, you give them a little bit and then wait and see if they have a question about what you've put out there. And if they do, then you answer that. Our instinct sometimes is to over explain, and then the kids get a little confused and they start to shut down. Like, could you give an example of a reason why one of those parents is not taking care of that one of your children? Just real short and concise.
The substance abuse with the mother, she was in recovery for a long period of time, and she actually had custody of the children for a while, and then voluntarily gave them back to the state, and they came back to me. So they were re-traumatized.
Okay. So, I think that I would talk to them about what substance use is, and that it makes people sick. It makes them make choices sometimes that aren't very healthy. And sometimes as a result, they don't feel like they can be a good parent, or that they can give you what they think you need. So they want you to have a better life. So they're doing this. And I would acknowledge that in that decision that the parent makes, the kids might not agree with it, and you might miss the parent, and that's okay. But that was the decision that was made by their mother or their father, whoever it was. Does that make sense?
Yes, and they have that much knowledge. It's just that they're still not accepting of it. They're like, we were living there, things appeared from the outside to be going well. And I guess that they just haven't come to some reasoning where it just makes sense to them.
Right. So they're still working in that mourning stage of trying to accept the situation. And one of the things you might say is, I don't know why your mom made that final decision to allow you to go live somewhere else. And because, unless you do, I would just keep it at that, and maybe someday you can find out. But for right now, all I can tell you is that she made a decision that she thought was going to be best for you, and kind of leave it at that. And they will ask over and over, so be prepared for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions? Okay. So here, is, and I'm glad you gave us that example, because that is one that we are seeing more and more often as substance use becomes even more prevalent, and with a lot, the substances that are being used now, and the introduction of fentanyl to a lot of things, we're losing a lot of parents to death. And so we are seeing kids, they injure themselves so badly they can't take care. And so it's something we have to talk about with kids. But the one thing here is that I really stress that you need to be truthful, because kids will make up all sorts of stories, and they will tell themselves different things about why something has happened or why somebody isn't around. And if you can be truthful with them, that's going to go a long way towards helping them adapt and accept. And it also allows them to ask any questions and you to clarify any misconceptions. Because if you're being honest with them, they know that they can come to you with questions and they're going to get an honest answer. So this is both for you and for the child, because you want to know, what is the child telling themselves about the grief. So be ready for that. Children are looking to you as a role model about how people grieve. And that might be different across cultures. It might be different between men and women. It might be, there's all sorts of different ways. But if you can share your feelings with your child, then they don't feel like they've got to fix you, because they know where you're at. If you share, but I'm really feeling sad today, but I'm going to go ahead and go to work, and I'll be okay. It's just part of grieving that I'm going to be sad sometimes. So it also allows them to, because the tendency sometimes is for these kids to withdraw and not show you the emotion. And if you show them that it's okay, hopefully they get the message that it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to talk about the person. It's okay to ask questions. And I have found in my years of doing this that, and I don't know about you all, but even as adults, that when someone has died, I know for myself, I want people to ask questions. I want to be able to talk about the person that has died, or my experience in, maybe I didn't get a job and here's how I handled it, or maybe I went through a divorce and these were some of the things that helped me. That's what being a role model and sharing your experience, strength, and hope can do. And if children want to talk about the person that died or the change that's occurred, this can be really difficult sometimes, because it brings up your own pain. But I go back to tell them the truth, answer their questions, let them know it's okay to cry, let them know that it's okay to take a nap when, normally you're on the go. But let them see that there are all these different ways to handle different situations and different feelings that go with grief. So I think one of the fears for a lot of kids is that they're going to forget, when it's someone that's died, that they're going to forget that person. So one of the things you might want to do is talk to them about, how do you want to remember, and what are we going to do? And that's also part of the process of grieving. And the other part of this is that, you do want to find out from them, how's life different for you? I worked with a child once whose grandfather died. His grandfather was the one that got him off the bus every day. And they had a little ritual of things they did after school. And so not only did he miss his grandfather, but he missed that ritual too. And his dad spent a lot of time with him trying to figure out, how do we replace that? How do you honor that was something that you really love, but what are we going to do different now? And how has that changed you? And again, it doesn't have to be a conversation. It could be through drawing. It could be through reading books. It could be through puppet shows and playing. There's all different ways, and it doesn't always have to be talking. I will tell you this, and when I worked with kids, and that's what I did for the first part of my career exclusively, kids will talk more when you put them in the car. I used to say that if my car could talk, all the secrets it would tell would be astounding, because I can't tell you how much time I've spent driving around New Circle Road or on the back roads, and kids just talking, teens just talking, because we don't have to have eye contact, and they can look out the window and talk to me about how they were feeling. So don't be scared to get in the car and go get an ice cream, or just go for a drive and see if that helps. And it might not the very first, second, or third time you do it, but as that becomes a routine or a ritual, then it opens them up for more sharing. And I kind of touched on that. Children express their emotions through play and other activities. And for some adults, it can be difficult to see that a child wants to go to the baseball game, or wants to go to dance class. when you're struggling with your feelings, this is completely normal for a child to want to have these other outlets. And it's important that you allow them to have those outlets, because the emotions are big, and how we handle it as an adult might be very different than how a child handles a big emotion. So the other thing then is to also help them figure out what else they can do to handle those big emotions. Whether it is, and it might be things that you hadn't thought about. Maybe it's yoga for kids, or maybe it's some sort of relaxation exercise, or maybe there's a movie that they like to watch, or something they like to draw. So, give them that opportunity to find what works for them. And it's real important that children know who's going to be taking care of them if you can't. Because once death is introduced and they start understanding that people die, they understand that everybody dies, then that natural leap then is to, well, what happens if you die? What happens to me? So talk to them about, well, if something were to happen to me, your dad and grandma and grandpa will be taking care of you. Or if something happens to me, then this person will be taking you to your activities. But this is hard, because it means that you all have to think about what might happen if something were to happen to you, so that you can offer that to a child. And you always can preface that with, I hope nothing happens, and I hope I live to an old age. But should something happen, then this is what we'll do. This is how it will be handled. Any questions about any of that? Okay. So this goes back to where I was telling you that it's a good idea to allow children to be part of the morning rituals. And that might mean, the rituals help them understand death a little bit better. So if it is an open casket funeral that they go and, you don't have to force them to look in the casket if you don't want to, or if they don't want to. But they get an idea of these are some of the things our family does when somebody dies. Maybe there's not a funeral, there's a celebration of life. Maybe when you all move houses, you take a plant that was at your old house and you have a ceremony and you plant it at your new house. Or if you're moving away and or let's say there's a divorce, can they have what's going to be the routine? Let's get them in a normal routine. Or and routine, by routine, I don't mean that things always are exactly the same, but that they know what to expect. And that's part of, they need you to help them feel safe. And they, if they understand how mourning works, how grieving works, and you also emphasize that everybody grieves a little bit differently, then they're going to be able to ask the questions. They're going to be able to express some of the feelings that they're having. And I don't know about you, but I know having lost my dad a few years ago, is there's I think even for adults, we want to feel safe. And that's especially true for kids. And we do that by having strong boundaries, by making expectations clear, about limits, expectations, and giving them the room to play outside of the family or engage in other activities, but also knowing that there's these rules and restrictions or boundaries that they're going to have to follow. And I liken that to, if you're driving down Main Street and we have all those crossroads and there's no stoplights. When kids don't feel safe, it's like they're just kind of barreling down Main Street and they don't know who might come from the right or the left. stoplights are the boundaries that you give them so that they know what to expect. When it's appropriate, you want to ask children about decision making. When you're making a decision, get their input. And I would suggest in that kind of situation that it's not tell us what you want to do, but give us an idea and let's consider, one of your suggestions too. So, you're asking for their suggestion, might not be anything that you can do or want to do, but at least give them the input to do some of those decisions. And that might be about if they want to participate in any ceremony, if they want to, if there's a burial, then do you want to go to the cemetery? Things like that. And while I think they need to be included, you also don't want to force any child, but to be involved in those, but you do want to find out what the reluctance is. And finally, it's taking care of yourself, showing them that when you're sad, you cry, and that sometimes maybe if you can't sleep, that this is what I do when I can't sleep. I drink some hot tea and I watch this relaxation video. Or, I'm feeling really sad, so I'm going to call such and such, and you talk. Or they see you attend a grief group. They see you eating healthy and drinking lots of water. These are the things that you want to demonstrate to them so that even if you're not saying this is how I do it, they see you doing these self-care activities. Okay. And let's see here. So if you scan this, and I'm feeling all big and techno superstar because I figured out how to do one of these and I hope it works, but it has all the resources and it has one of the websites on there that I've listed there it's a guideline for parents to help their children through grief. So guidelines for the adults to help their children through grief. And it's a bunch of bullet points. And some of them that I really like in here are that as soon as possible, you talk to the child about the death, the move, the change, things that are doing it. And you do it in very simple language, very short, not too much detail, and just answer their questions. And it is okay to say to them, I don't know, but let's find somebody who might know. So that's really important. Again, use the word dead, use the word death, not they're sleeping or God took them or things like that. We want them to understand and feel comfortable with those words and know what it means. And when you talk about the person that's died, use the name that they know that person by. Or if you moved, or if you are divorcing, you just want to, when you talk about the other parent, you use, well, when you're at dad's house, when you're at mom's house, things like that. And so that they know that who you're talking about and that there's some relationship and connection there. I'm big on reading books with kids, about whatever the topic might be, moving, grief, parents divorcing, parents remarrying, things like that. And if you have a spiritual life, they might have questions about some higher power, and be prepared to talk about that, about your beliefs, and answer questions for them. The other thing with kids that you want to watch out for is difficulty sleeping and bad dreams. And if they're having bad dreams, try to talk to them about it or ask them to draw a picture about what happened. And again, this helps you gauge how they're feeling. So the other thing that you'll find in, if you scan here, is a great article about the different ages and stages and the impact of grief has, and how you can counter those things or help a child. And I used a lot of the material from these sites, so I really highly recommend them, that you look at them. But that's all I have. Do you all have any questions or comments, concerns?